I'm Gareth Connolly, Chief Executive of Connolly's Red Mills. We're a fifth generation family business established in 1908. Goresbridge is the centre of the universe, and you can see behind me there the map. That's the market. And we started from humble beginnings. The mill was bought here in 1908 by my great-great-grandfather, Michael. He was looking to source flour for a bakery business that he had 6 miles over the road. Getting grain, making flour, and then into the animal feed business that led into both human and animal in terms of porridge and then animal products. And then with the advent of the likes of convenient cereals, it became more difficult to make porridge, but that transitioned into us making flaked products and steam cooking ingredients. That transitioned into equine products as well as agri products. We transitioned then from that into pet foods, and now we're exporting to about 80 countries globally with our performance equine feeds and our pet products. Basically, we make products for all animals, whether it's 2 legs or 4 legs. On a pet basis, yeah, we have dogs, cats, small animals, rabbits, guinea pigs, chinchillas, and then larger we have obviously equine, but we also do some camel product as well. So and everything in between. On a pet product basis, yeah, we are also making plant-based products. So whether that's for vegan owners and they want a vegan household, we're also making plant-based products for dogs, and that's included in that is also treats and supplements. So covering all bases. Yeah, our sustainability story, I think initially started with how we could capture wastewater on the site. So actually applied to Kilkenny County Council back in 2014 for a reed bed, and that initially was a size, I think it was around 6,000 square or 7,000 square meters. We then extended that to a total of 12,000 square meters in 2021. So that's a reed bed which acts as a natural digester, captures any rainwater from the site, but also is it's its own natural habitat, and has created sort of a greening area as well. Some of the staff would actually walk down and just have a nice place to walk as well as a natural digester. And that was probably the start of a process, I guess, as everything has developed over the last number of years. Greening has been a big part of every conversation, and everybody's asking the question of what are you doing from a green point of view, carbon footprint, what are the impact, and in the future in terms of what people will see on the back of a bag, they'll see what kind of impact from a carbon point of view has gone into the actual manufacturing of that product. So that's been a major discussion within the company, within the teams and with our employees, and right across in terms of what can we do to impact on a carbon footprint basis. We're a big user of energy here, and I guess in terms of when we take grain from our farmers, we take it direct from the combine and we have to dry that. That's a very intensive process. We're using heat, and you're trying to basically take about 5% moisture out of grains when it comes in green from the farm, so that we can have it on site and store it. And when we looked at that process, we said, well, what could we do to actually improve it? So one of the big projects we undertook in the last sort of 2.5 years was to change that from heavy fuel oils to natural gas. And that process was in terms of changing a lot of the equipment, being able to use natural gas instead of the heavy fuel oils. And we predict that that's probably had, in total, will have about a 26% reduction in our carbon emissions. So we're employing about 380 people across 5 sites. Each of the sites has tried in its own right to reduce its impact. So for example, here in Goresbridge, which is the main manufacturing facility and the centre head office, we have changed from heavy fuel oils over to natural gas. We have put in LEDs across the majority of the facility. We have electric forklifts, and we have EV charging points for either visitors and or for some of the employees from a measurement point of view. And then in terms of our other facilities, so Brussels Inch, where we're manufacturing a lot of our care products, we've put in solar across that site. In terms of our retail sites, we've a main retail store in Kilkenny. We're also we've also put in solar panels there. We've two other sites then where we're in the process of reviewing solar potential, and then in terms of EV charging points for forklifts, and then in terms of the types of energy sources we're using. We've looked at solar panels, and we've put a number of solar panels across certain sites. Based on just having looked at it just earlier on there, we've created 44 megawatts of power. Again, that was, I think, a saving of about 85.8 tons of carbon on that solar angle, and that's going to continue. We're looking at more, and again, depending on the sites, some of the sites are more suitable than others. We put in LED lighting across the facilities. That's a very, very big process, and quite a lot of lighting that has to be undertaken. So as we've changed out old for new, we've gone down the LED route. On a packaging basis, then we've also gone down the route of recyclable packaging. Again, quite a challenge when you're looking at, you know, making sure that the print quality of your packaging and how you present is at the same level, and then making sure that the actual product will hold and keep the actual finished product in the right format. So in terms of preservation, making sure that the product, the shelf life, and everything is protected, but then still protecting the environment in terms of recyclability. So on an equine basis, our horse feeds, we're using fully recyclable material, and there's an element of recycled material within that recyclable package. We've also done the same on some of our new pet food products, and our new cat line on Go Native, that will actually be fully recyclable as well. But that's a whole process, and we are working towards it. A lot of the technology is only being developed, so it's a gradual process, but something that we're looking at right across. A number of our care products would also be in aluminium tins. On an overall basis, it's a very big process, but it's how do we actually manage, or how can we look to make those improvements as we've gone along. On an employee basis, we actually worked with another local company, and about, I'd say, 30 or 40 of our employees have gone through a sustainability course with Very Connect, and that has been very interesting. A lot of things even people can do at home to have an impact on the environment, as well as what they're looking at, whether it's greening or carbon reduction. And then I guess one thing that we would have done around the site and around the manufacturing facilities was to have an element of greening, or have trees. And about 15 years ago, we planted about 50 oak trees in one of the fields here neighbouring the plant, but also around the factory, just in terms of trying to create a natural element to what is a manufacturing facility. So probably in the last, certainly in the last sort of 5 years, the movements around having to get to net zero and looking at where we're going to be within 2020, we've put a more formal approach around how can we actually reduce our carbon footprint. Ultimately, it's a very challenging thing to do, because we still use a lot of fossil fuels. We still have to get into very high temperatures, and we're still going to be using those energy sources. But until the technology follows, it's going to be very hard to get to that net zero piece. So how can we look at the different angles? How can we look to reduce over time, and then as the technology catches up, invest? And I guess that's what we've done in terms of, as I said, moving from heavy fuel oils to natural gas, using solar where possible, and then in terms of whether it's from suppliers or packaging, how can we move towards a greener future? On an energy basis, all our electricity is certified renewable across all our sites, and that was something that we started to do about, I would say, 6 or 7 years ago. And again, to be able to use and have certified electricity coming either from wind or from solar was a big part of being able to plug in again in terms of that carbon reduction. In terms of trying to understand the whole movement towards a net zero piece, it's quite challenging. There's a lot of information out there. It's trying to weed through and understand what impact and what can you actually have, and what can you do with the company, with your employees, with your suppliers. And certainly it's some of the technology is moving quite quickly, and others it's much more challenging. I think the likes of Enterprise Ireland and in terms of green initiatives that they're trying to work with, certainly some of the information coming through from government to try and give a steer on it, but it is quite challenging. We've used a number of consultants to try and give us a steer, and we are putting together a whole formal process of measurement around trying to get to that net zero piece, but it is difficult to try and navigate. There's a lot of challenges in terms of understanding where you are today versus where you need to get to, and I think not everything is going to deliver the results that you expect. I think we've been quite fortunate in terms of the processes that we've gone down. There is help there from grants available across government, but doing your due diligence and doing the research and trying to understand is a crucial part. In terms of advice, I think it's important to try and do as much research as possible. I think trying to get a measure of where you are at the moment, at this moment in time, and then trying to see what's achievable. I think it's important not to try and do too much too quickly, because the technology is moving so quickly at the moment. An example we're looking at in terms of heat pumps, that technology is developing, and if we can get to a scenario where we can use heat pumps to reduce generation of steam, that they're sort of technologies that are just starting to really have an impact. So I think that it's important that people take a measure of where they are at the moment. I think it's a little and often approach is important, and small things can have a big impact. So I think it's important to I suppose ask as much as possible from local government, try and get as much information, and then look to make small changes over a period of time, and it's a continuous process.
I'm the Chief Technical Officer here at Connolly's Red Mills, which means I'm responsible for the R&D, technical support, quality management, and all the technical developments, formulations, etc., right across the horse, animal and farm animal and pet food side. So one of the big areas that we are concerned with nowadays is sustainability, and customers want to know about things like carbon footprint, because the feed that they use, whether it be on their farm or in their stable, a lot of the carbon emissions associated with the production of the animals can come from the feed. So what we did a couple of years ago is try to establish what the carbon footprint is of every product we produce here at Goresbridge. That involved going back into the supply chain. We buy a lot of grain from local farmers here in Ireland, and also a lot of imported materials that can't be grown here in Ireland. So we had to find out what's the carbon footprint of those ingredients, and then add on what we actually use here in terms of manufacturing, the energy, electricity, etc., and then taking the product out to the customer. So that was a very interesting exercise and taught us a lot about where the carbon footprint of the feed is, and now we're able to provide that information to customers, and that is going to become a lot more important in the future. Customers will want to know what the carbon footprint of the feed is. We want to establish our baseline first of all, see where we're at, and then obviously once you have that information then, and you decide to go down by 10%, 15%, whatever, you can make those steps and then come back again and measure later on. One of the things we found out is a key driver of carbon footprint is what happened inside the gate, whether it was an Irish farmer growing barley or an American farmer growing soybeans. Really a huge part, over 90% of the carbon footprint of the feed is related to the production. So one of the things we also found out is if we use as many Irish ingredients as we can, that brings down the footprint even further. So that's going to change the dynamic, I think, of sourcing ingredients in the future, knowing that information. We've been looking at a few other areas, like things like biodigestion, things like heat pumps, things like hydropower. Some of those are obviously very out there, and you have to go steadily really and move along gently. We often say it's very hard to go green if you're in the red, so a lot of times you can be way ahead of the curve. So it's really about moving along at the right pace, and looking at those technologies and being aware of them, and deciding when to deploy them when the time is right.
Good morning, my name is Owen Kennedy. I'm the Compliance Manager in Connolly's Red Mills in Goresbridge. We're here today in the wetlands The wetlands are 7 natural beds, natural wastewater treatment process. The site is IPC licensed with the EPA. We're in a special area conservation, which over there in the fields behind us are full of migratory birds. The reed beds here are a system of a natural wastewater treatment plant. Instead of building a concrete plant with associated equipment, the water flows in here from the yards and the roofs, naturally flows through the 7 cells. The cells are like paddy fields with rice, with water. There's water in them the whole time. You have the indigenous ICW species in it that's taken the constituents to come in the natural water, such as suspended solids, and cleaning that prior to discharge to the River Barrow.
So as 5th generation, I think it's on our generation to try and make sure that we're doing as much as we possibly can for the future. So this is very much part and parcel of our strategy. That move to net zero is a crucial part, and while technology is only getting to a point where we can hopefully get to that net zero piece, I think it's important that it's our responsibility, and it's on us to make sure that that journey is matched off. I think a lot of the things that we've started to do, we're only touching. It's a continuous process, but it's hugely important, and it's a massive part of our ongoing strategy to make sure that we can get to that net zero position.